Hi everybody, in this video what I'm going to show you is how to factorize by grouping. And before you watch this video you really need to understand the basics of factorizing. Now, just like any questions that really involve algebra, you really need to be careful of the negative signs, especially if you're multiplying or dividing, or in this case factorizing by negatives. So you need to make sure that you've got the correct positive or negative sign. So we'll have a look at a couple of examples. So the first example, and all the examples we're going to do in this video, have four terms. So with factorizing by grouping, the first thing that you want to do in the first step is that you need to pair up your terms so that you can factorize each of those pairs. So what I normally do is I either have a look at the numbers first and see what can be matched up, or I could have a look at the variables. So for this one, you can see, with the first two terms, you can see that this guy has an x and this guy has an x. So I could factorize these two terms if I wanted to. You can see that this guy and this guy both have a 4. So I could factorize these two if I wanted to. These two both have a's, so I could factorize those two. So it's really up to you how you want to match them up. I prefer just to read from left to right and group the ones that can be grouped just in reading order. So that's if they can be grouped. So what I'm going to do for this particular one is group both of these because they both have an x that can be factorized, and I'm going to group both of these because they both have an a that can be factorized. And really what we do is we just treat them both as two separate factorization questions. So for my first pair, what I can do is I can take the x out, so I'm going to factorize it by x, and it's a positive x because they're both positives. And then what I need to do is divide both of these by my x. So x squared divided by x is just x. Positive 4x divided by x is just going to be positive 4. And then I have a look at my second pair. So both of these guys can be factorized by the letter a, or the variable a. So I'm going to take out positive a, because they're all positives. And then I'm going to divide both of these by the a that I factorized out. So ax divided by a is x. Positive 4a divided by positive a is going to be positive 4. Now when you get to this step, more often than not, especially with textbook examples, is that when you get to this stage, what you find are these two brackets are exactly the same. And because they're exactly the same, that means that I can factorize this term and this term again by the full bracket. So what I'm going to do is factorize it by the bracket. So I'll take the bracket out the front. So it's x plus 4. And then just like normal factorization, I'm going to write everything that's left over once I've taken out, once factorized by my bracket. So x in brackets x plus 4 divided by that, they're going to cancel out. So I'm just going to be left with an x. And over here, I've already factorized out this x plus 4. So all I'm left with is a positive a. And then I'm done. Let's go to a new example. It's a little bit trickier because there's some bigger numbers and there's more variables. So I have to be careful with my factorizing. So first thing you want to do again is you want to match up the letters, all the numbers that can be factorized out. So if I have a look at these ones, straight away you can see that both of these guys can be factorized by 3, because 3 goes into 3 and 6. And it could also be factorized by the x, because they both have x's. This guy over here, you can see that 7, you've got 7 and 14, so both of these can be divided by 7, so you can factorize it out by that. So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to factorize these guys, and I'm going to factorize these guys. So if I have a look at the first group, I've got to take the highest common factors out, so I've got to make sure that I factorize by the numbers and the letters that are possible. So the biggest number that I can factorize it by is going to be a 3. And we'll also take the x out because they both have the x. Now once I do that, I need to divide both of these by 3x. So 3 divided by 3 is just 1. X squared divided by x, I'm just left with an x. Negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. That's where you've got to be careful with the negatives. I've already taken my x out, so I'm just left with an a. We'll close the bracket. Now for the next one, this is where you have to be really careful with the brackets. I call it mathematical etiquette, but if you're trying to factorize in maths, what you need to do is if this front number is a negative, when you factorize by the number, in this case the 7, we're also going to factorize out this negative number as well. If you don't do that, you won't end up with the same brackets. So just make sure, you should do this with all your factorising, is if there's ever a negative out the front, like this case, make sure that you take out that negative. So I'm going to factorise both of these by -7. And this is where you have to be careful with your signs now. So I had -7, I'm factorising it by -7, so -7, or negative divided by negative is positive, 7 divided by 7 is 1, and I'm just going to be left with an x. For my next term, positive divided by a negative is going to be a negative, 14 divided by 7 is 2, and I'm going to be left with my a. So if you do it correctly, again, what you should see is that your two brackets are going to be exactly the same. And what I'm going to do, just like the last example, is I'm going to factorise both of these terms by the brackets. So I'm going to pull the brackets out the front. So I've got x minus 2a. And once I remove the x minus 2a, because I factorised it out, I'm just going to be left with 3x from this guy, and I'm going to be left with the -7 from that guy. And then we're done. Just do one more example. And again, when we have a look at this, first thing you need to do is match up your pairs. So if I have a look at the first two, I could divide both of these by 2 if I wanted to. If I have a look at the second pair though, there's nothing that I can factorise it by. So what I'm going to have to do is change my pairs around. We'll have another look. So I can see this has a 2 and this has an 8. So these guys can be factorised, and they both have an a as well. So that's easy, that can be done. The second term and the fourth term, both of them can be divided by 5, so I can pair them up as well. So I'm going to match up this guy and this guy. I'm going to match up this guy and that guy. And again, it doesn't matter what order you're matching them up in, you just need to make sure that you can factorise both of those pairs. So if I factorise the 2ax and the 8a first of all, I'm going to take out the 2, because 2 is the highest number that I can take out. And I'm also going to take out the a, because they both have an a. Now once I do that, all I'm going to be left over with this guy is the x, positive x, and over here, 8 divided by 2, positive divided by positive is positive, 8 divided by 2 is 4, and I've taken my a out, so I haven't got anything left, so I'll close the brackets off. Now I'll deal with the -20 and the -5x. So again, this has a negative out the front, so I'm going to have to divide it by a negative. And the biggest number that goes into both is 5, so I'm going to divide both by -5. So in the brackets, a negative divided by a negative is positive, 20 divided by 5 is 4, and over here we got a negative divided by a negative is a positive, 5 divided by 5 is 1, and I'm just going to be left with my x. Now if you do that correctly, what you'll see is your brackets are still the same. Now in this case, your x plus 4 isn't the same way around as your 4 plus x, but x plus 4 is the same as 4 plus x. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to factorise out the bracket, just like the other questions, and I'm going to write it as x plus 4. If you wanted to write it as 4 plus x, that's okay as well. And in my second bracket, it's everything that's left over once I divide both of these by x plus 4. So once I've taken out the x plus 4, I'm just left with 2a. I've taken out the 4 plus x out here, so I'm just left with -5, and we're all done. Thanks for listening, please subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.